All right, so you've probably read and heard all about the benefits of cold plunging and ice plunging. And you've thought to yourself that this is something that you'd love to try. Maybe you've tried cold showers and you now want to take this to the next step by getting into a cold plunge and doing full immersion of your body. There are a number of things that you really need to consider before you do this. And as someone who's gone through this journey myself and had to consider all of these things along the way, I've had a lot of learnings. And so I wanted to share those learnings with you before you go out and make this investment. For me, before I made the investment in a cold plunge, I wanted to invest in something that wasn't too expensive and would allow me to prove to myself that this is actually a habit that I'm going to stick to. Getting into cold water is uncomfortable. The benefits are wonderful and you feel incredible afterwards, but the actual practice of doing it every single day is really uncomfortable. And it's a whole lot harder when the weather outside is really cold. And so I decided to invest in the Nurecover Portable Pod 2.0. And I decided this because it was really cost effective and it had a lot of really great reviews. However, I've had a lot of learnings along the way on what it takes to actually be able to get the benefits of cold plunging. When you look at all of the science and the data, it says that in order to get the benefits, you need to be plunging below 15 degrees Celsius or below 60 degrees Fahrenheit for up to 11 minutes cumulatively a week. Now, that sounds wonderful, but it's summer here in New Zealand at the moment, 24 to 26 degrees in the middle of the day, and keeping my pool that temperature, 15 degrees, or even getting it to that temperature is a real challenge. And this is something that I don't think many people think of when they see those wonderful pictures and videos of people submerged with all the ice floating on top. That is a very difficult thing to do and very difficult to keep your pool in that way. So here are a couple of things that you need to consider before you buy your pool. As you see here, I've got this wonderful makeshift picnic cover on my pool. And I've done this because my pool's situated here outside under a shaded deck, but it still gets a lot of sun in the morning. And with that sun, there are a lot of temperature changes. The pool itself is black, which, surprise, surprise, attracts a lot of heat. And so if this is getting any direct sunlight, it's going to heat up the water inside massively. Not considering the fact that even if it wasn't getting any sunshine, the ambient temperature outside is affecting the temperature of the water. From the tap at the moment, the temperature is coming out at 18 degrees Celsius. But in the pool, for a couple of hours, it's well up above 20. So those are some of the things that you really need to consider is how are you going to keep your pool cold? How are you going to get it to the temperature you need to actually get the benefits of this? When I ordered this, so this is the Nurecover Pod 2.0, and when I ordered this, I ordered the bundle that came with the thermo lid and the 296 cube ice trays. And I thought, that's fantastic. That's going to help me get the pool to exactly where I need it to be. Well, think again. These are the 96 cube ice trays, and the depth of these ice cubes is nothing. This is tiny. If I were to freeze this and put this in the pool, I don't even think it would change the temperature by 0.1 of a degree. So that's out the window. The other thing to consider, which was one of the reasons that I bought this pool, was that it came with a thermo cover lid, which was also a carry case. Now in the pictures, this looks like it's a great rubber, solid thermo lid that's going to help keep the cold in, but actually it's a really flimsy canvas case that when you take off, you can collapse your pool, fold in, and carry it around. Now this is great for transportation, but it does diddly squat for keeping your pool cold. My plunge pool also came with this wonderful water absorbing mat, and this is something that I actually really do like about this pool. When you stand on it, it seems like it won't absorb any water, but it really absorbs a lot and it keeps a lot of the mess, a lot of the water out. So one of the biggest things here to consider is what is it going to take to get your pool cold enough? Currently this pool, I'll just grab the monitor here. So over here I've got my little temperature gauge monitor. This is the Inkbird temperature gauge monitor. So we're currently looking at 22.5 degrees. This pool's been covered all morning and it's 22.5 degrees. In order to get that down below 15 degrees, I'm going to need somewhere between 24 to 30 kilograms of ice. This is a 380 litre pool, and while I dropped the level to try and accommodate my body weight and not let any water leave, I still need somewhere around 24 kgs of ice. If you consider that you need 30 kilograms of ice in New Zealand, we pay $3.30 for a bag of ice that's 3 kgs. So that's $33 a day. Keeping your pool that cold and putting that amount of ice in every day not only is wasteful because of all the plastic that comes with the ice, but it is unsustainable from a cost perspective. That's $900 a month, almost $1,000 a month you'd spend just on buying ice. So that's not sustainable. But what I did instead, which is part of my learnings, is I bought a freezer. I bought a freezer to freeze my own ice, and that comes with the next challenge. So considering I needed 24 kilos of ice to keep my ice plunge down below 15 degrees, the next challenge came: how do I create that amount of ice and how am I going to store it? So in our case, we actually needed to upgrade and we needed to get another freezer. And so we bought a bigger freezer here, and there are a couple of shelves here that are dedicated to my ice. Storing and creating that amount of ice is actually really difficult. And so what I did was I went to a local store here called Kmart, and I bought these plastic tubs with silicone sealed lids so that they don't leak. This is a 6 liter and this is a 1.2 liter. And I have a number of these inside of the freezer that I freeze overnight. Because of the size of the tub though, the 6 kg takes more than 2 days to freeze right through. These 1.2s, usually I can freeze in 24 hours. So in order to keep my pool cold, I'm having to use a lot of these to get the temperature down. If I need 24 kgs of ice, I need 4 of these. And considering the size, this could take up an entire freezer just in my ice blocks. It's a lot of space and a lot of time. But from a cost perspective, using the portable plunge, this is probably the most cost-effective way to do this if you don't want to shell out for a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 ice plunge. And if you're like me and you wanted to prove this to yourself first and to prove that you will actually use this long term, then this is the way to go. However, I found that this is really tedious. The filling of these every single day, the time it takes to freeze them, and the constant use of the freezer has become quite a challenge for me. And it usually takes me 20 minutes or so in terms of like putting the ice in the pool, refilling these, getting these back into the freezer. It's a lot of admin. And so I've decided to buy myself a deep freeze, a chest freezer, which will actually be arriving next week. And I'm going to do a chest freezer conversion, which I'll create a video on around that. So if you want to buy yourself a portable plunge, the things that you really need to consider are space. Do you have the space to keep it? How much time is it going to take you to get that water to the temperature it needs to be? What's the cost of that? And do you have the ability to store that amount of ice in order to do this? Now, granted, it's summer here in New Zealand, so in winter, this is going to be a whole lot easier for me. I'm probably not going to need any ice because the temperature is going to be below that 15 degrees ambient temperature, and I'll likely have a plunge pool that'll sit at 10 degrees, no problem. But no matter where you are in the world, if you're in the summer seasons, this is going to be a lot more challenging than you think to get your plunge pool cold. There are a couple of other things that people ask me around the plunge pool, and those are things like how often do I have to change the water. So my wife and I, we plunge every single day. We call it plunge, which is our plunge and lunch. We plunge around midday every day, and with both of us in and out of the pool every single day, I find that at around 7 days, somewhere between 5 and 7 days, I need to change the water. There are online forums that recommend that you shower before you get in the pool, and this would obviously keep the water cleaner for longer, but I reckon that if I'm going to be showering every single day and we're both going to shower every single day before we get in, we'd probably use the same amount of water as we would to empty and fill the pool once a week. So from a water change perspective, 5 to 7 days is what I'm finding, and that's because I'm not using any chemicals. I don't want to add any chlorine, and I don't want to do anything like that in order to keep the water clean. I'd rather just change it out. I will in the future, with my deep freeze conversion, be investing in an ozone generator, which is a natural way to clear bacteria and viruses, etc. from the water and keep the water crystal clear along with filtration. But with this pool, because of the size, it doesn't make sense for me to put a pump and a filtration system inside. I'm just emptying and filling it when I need to. Now, I've just gone ahead and put in a whole bunch of ice to try and bring the temperature down and get ready for my midday plunge. As you can see behind me here, this is just a stack of today's containers, and this isn't even all the ice that I need. So I've got 2 6 liters and 4 1.2s, so a total of 16.8 liters, 16.8 kgs of ice have gone into the pool, and this will probably drop the temperature down to somewhere around 16 degrees. Now, I want this to be 12, and over summer I've really struggled to get it there because I haven't been able to produce enough ice because I don't have enough space in the freezer to make enough ice within a 24-hour period. I'm usually getting this pool down to somewhere below 15 degrees, 14, sometimes maybe 13 if it's a colder, cloudy day. The other thing to consider here is because of the water in the pool, the amount of water, the more water you have, obviously the more ice it takes to cool it. And I have created a line in the pool and I know how much water needs to be in before it overflows with my body weight. So when I put the ice in, like I did now, I just turn the tap and I release some water because obviously there's the displacement of the ice, and I drop the water level down to the level that it needs to be so that I have less water to cool, which of course increases the cooling effect. Let's have a look at the ice. So as you can see, this is the amount of ice that I have in the pool at the moment. This is the 4 1.2 kg ice cubes and the 2 6 kg ice cubes. The thing to consider here with big ice blocks is that they take a long time to melt. Now, if you were using bags of ice, because the ice blocks are smaller, the surface area that's connected with the water is greater, and so the ice melts a lot faster. However, like I said, cost-wise, that's really not an effective option for me, and it would cost far too much money to be able to do that. So as you can see, the water level is a little bit high, so I'll just come over here to the tap, flick the tap on, and I'll just drain out a whole bunch of the water. This does actually come with an extender pipe, but it's only about 1 meter, and this deck is fine for me to just drain the water beneath. Alright, so now I've had my ice in there for a little while, the pool's cooling down nicely. It's come down to 14 degrees, which is really great. That's going to be a good temperature for me to plunge in. Some of the other things that you might want to consider around this is you might be thinking, well, could I do something like add a chiller? There are ice chillers and water chillers that you can buy as external units that filter the water through and cool it. From a plunge pool perspective, with a portable plunge, this isn't something that I would recommend, and it's something that I've looked into myself because one, these pools are not well insulated. So keeping that temperature is going to put a lot more strain on the chiller than it would on a pool that has better insulation. The other thing to consider with that is with these plunge pools, you need a circular flow of water. So the water would need to leave and it would need to come back in. Now with a portable plunger, because of the material, it's difficult to do. You've got an outlet valve, as you saw me emptying earlier, but you don't have a way for the water to come in unless you want to pop a pipe in the top. If you're in the States and you have ability to get the ice barrels, which is something that I would love to get, is they're a big plastic barrel, or you have a steel tub or something. Those are things that are a lot easier to plumb in holes and plumb in piping, where you might be able to put something like this, a through hole through the side of the plunge, and you can then run piping to a chiller. But the chillers themselves are actually not cost effective. Here in New Zealand, they would probably cost anywhere over $1,000. So if you were looking at a chiller, either through Alibaba or AliExpress, or even looking at getting it here, you'd probably be spending $2,000 for a chiller, plus all the plumbing and the piping, which just becomes really cost prohibitive again. So through all of my research, the thing that I've found is going to be the most effective is a chest freezer. Now, there are obviously safety concerns with the chest freezer with it being plugged in, but that can easily be solved by unplugging it when you get in. But the investment of a chest freezer, some silicone, a little bit of water, some filtration in the terms of like an in-pool filter, maybe some ozone to keep the water clean, and a temperature controller is far less than trying to make your own ice plunge with a chiller and piping. So I'll be posting a video of me creating my deep freeze chest freezer plunge, and I'll post it up for you if you're interested. But if you are wanting to get into cold plunging, I do recommend the portable plunge because it's a great way to test whether you have the grit, the mental grit, the discipline to continue with this and to prove it to yourself before you go and invest more money in something that's permanent. The great thing with a deep freeze as well though is if you do consider it and you don't end up using it, you can just use it as a freezer. You can use it as a chest freezer to freeze all of your stuff, or you could sell it to someone else who will use it as well. Provided you haven't drilled any holes or created any, issues with it, then that should be fine to do. So it's not all lost if you decide that this isn't something that you'd want to do, but it is a lot of work to start off. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that as you consider this, you'll take these things into account. I absolutely recommend cold plunging and cold immersion. It's been wonderful. I love the benefits. I love the mental benefits that I'm getting from it. I also love the discipline that it takes and the grit that's required when you get into that cold water and everything in your body says, let's get out. And you have to then say, no, I'm going to do this. That builds so much self-trust and so much self-love as you dedicate time and space for yourself. but it is not without its challenges to get the pool to where it needs to be so that you can get the benefits. Drop me any comments if you have any questions. Hope this was helpful to you, and let's get plunging.